What is an unexplainable memory from your childhood? Every year at our cabin I have a dream I fall into the lake. Was told later that I fell in when I was younger. I never have this dream at home. I don't know if the repressed memory is trying to tell me not to go on the water or just don't be stupid and fall face first. When I was 10 or 11, I woke up very early in the morning to someone driving down our long driveway. It was dark outside, but I just barely peeked out my window to watch a man look into all of our car windows, survey our flower beds, and finally peer into my bedroom window. I played asleep, and when I looked out the window again, he was driving backwards out of our driveway. In the morning, I mentioned what I saw to everyone, but no one acknowledged hearing or seeing anything, despite the man's headlights being very bright, maybe even switched to brights, and he slammed his car doors very loudly. But I can remember how scary it was having his face pressed against the window above my head and praying he didn't try the lock. No one believes me to this day. I swear it was not a dream. When I was a kid I had a classmate over who claimed he was a vampire. I didn't believe him. I told him if his eyes glow in the dark, that would prove he was a vampire. We went into the bathroom and I turned off the light. His eyes were glowing. It scared the crap out of me. I opened the door, ran outside, jumped on my bike, and got as far away from my house as I thought I could. When I eventually came back home the classmate was gone, and my dad was pissed that I abandoned my friend. I hope this counts. It was unexplainable when I was a child, but I've since learned more. My father was the youngest of 11 kids. That meant I had a lot of aunts and uncles. I didn't meet all of them growing up as a child, but I met quite a few. However, I was always told growing up that it was impossible for me to have met one specific aunt because she died long ago. Yet I remembered meeting this aunt at my grandparents' house when my grandmother's funeral was being held. I was a young kid, age 10, and there were very few cousins my age in attendance. In fact, my being there was seen as offensive to some of the aunts and uncles because death isn't for children. This was back in 1979, so there was very little to occupy my time. I ate food because there was a lot of food on the table. I sat and listened to what the grown-ups were saying and quickly lost track because I didn't understand a bit of it. Eventually, my father got sick of being told that I was not welcome and handed me a bag of toy cars and sent me into a back room where I couldn't be seen or heard. I played with the cars for a while when a woman came in. She said she was my aunt because she was my father's sister and not because she was married to any of my father's brothers. She was obviously older than my dad, but definitely wanted to play cars with me, which I thought was very strange. She wasn't dressed in black like everyone else, and she talked funny. We had fun playing cars for a while, then she left. Everyone insisted for decades that it was impossible for me to have met her, and that I was wrong. I was also admonished many times to stop bringing it up, stop mentioning her name, and, most especially, to stop referring to her as my aunt or to imply that she was a sibling to my father or any of his other siblings. So, here's where I explain what I learned as an adult. This sibling was born wrong somehow. She might have been developmentally disabled, had cerebral palsy, heck, she might just have been on the autism spectrum. But in the time that she was a child, you didn't acknowledge children like that. She was, literally, locked in an attic room, and left there, fed in the room, and never talked to or let out of the room. When she was still a child, but not yet an adult, she was taken from the house and put into a special home. A nice phrase that meant insane asylum, where she was warehoused for the rest of her life. The younger siblings were only told that she died, while the older ones were aware that she was taken away. She was still alive until 1987, at least, and it was very possible and likely that one of her older siblings might have brought her home for the funeral of her mother, where I met her. Only my neighbor was able to make it to my birthday party because of an incredibly strong and sudden snowstorm. I remember the day and the snow so clearly, but my birthday is in July. Breathing underwater. Turns out a lot of people have memories of being able to do something similar. Still haven't gotten an explanation. My family and I were driving out of Bellows, a campsite beach for military families in Hawaii. I lazily gaze out the window and something catches my eye. About 30 feet away in a clearing before a metal gate leading into the forest was a massive bird. Like 8 feet tall, massive. It had a long neck, brown feathers, and very thick long legs. My jaw dropped and I was still processing what I had seen when my dad said, "What the heck was that?" Turns out he had seen it too, and we both described it identically. No one else saw it, and by the time our brains had caught up with our eyes it was too late to turn around. I will always regret not turning around. When we returned later in the day there was nothing there. When we asked a guard about it, he laughed at us. I scoured the internet afterward, and it looked like nothing I could find. At least, nothing that isn't extinct. It looked amazingly similar to one of the larger species of moa. But those lived in New Zealand thousands of miles away and died out hundreds of years ago. This happened back in 2009, and to this day I wonder whether I saw a Lazarus species. I remember laying in bed one night, staring hard out the window because it was storming pretty bad. All of a sudden, it got even darker than it was, and my mom calmly walked in my room and said, "Stop looking out the window, honey, it's not safe." Then she left, and I saw garbage tossed into the air and I could hear the shingles slapping against the roof cause they nearly got ripped off. Pretty obvious it was a tornado. But the next day, my parents acted like nothing happened. We went outside at one point and everything looked the same as it always was. So I don't know if it really happened or if it was a dream. I'll have to ask my mom later and see if she remembers anything about that day. My sister and I apparently both had the same dream one night, a scary one. We were staying in this villa where we had to share a room and we both woke up suddenly. The window was open when it hadn't been before. I realized she was awake as well and told her I'd had a bad dream. And as I started to describe it, she started talking along with me, describing the same dream. In it, this black creature that looked like a bull, only it had shiny, scaly, plastic looking skin, was standing in the open window with this weird mechanical device, and it somehow fired a projectile at the lamp in the room, which started rocking back and forth. Neither of us wanted to get up and close the window in case the thing was actually out there, so we called for our mum, and she closed it, reassured us in typical mum fashion, etc. For months we would talk about that incident, and we could never figure out how we both managed to have the same exact dream at the same time. My mother walked into my room, waking me up to tell me that most of the world's population was dead. I spent the rest of the day as normal, eating breakfast, going shopping with her, going to a playground, then eating dinner, albeit acting quite nervous throughout. The next day, she tried to make it clear that what started the previous morning wasn't true. I asked her if she remembered, but she told me she didn't. I'm certain it wasn't a dream, because I recalled the rest of what happened the previous day to her, only to be met by her confirmation that everything I remembered was correct, right down to how shaky I was and how upset I seemed, all except for the part that humanity was on the brink of extinction. I used to have nightmares. My dad put up a poster of Peter Pan in my room and told me that when I went to sleep, Peter would fly out of the poster and chase all of the monsters away. I never had another bad dream. I could lucid dream when I was a kid. I would actually get really excited to go to bed because I could decide what to dream and then dream it. I had a reoccurring character in my lucid dreaming. He was a boy my age with blonde hair. We would always play in this backyard playground type setting that has a big brick wall on the edge. One night I dreamt that we really wanted to find out what was on the other side of that wall. So we climbed a tree and the boy climbed onto the wall, looked back at me and waved, and went over it. I never lucid dreamed again after that. It actually caused me a lot of distress as a kid. I legit missed him terribly and tried so hard to lucid dream, but just couldn't do it anymore after that. I was like 5 years old when this happened. I woke one night while camping in a cabin. and I saw a cattail dangle from this lamp. It'd sink down and then disappear back up into the lampshade. It also started calling for me, going like "Woohoo," unnerved the heck out of little me. I can't remember if I just never checked to see if there was anything there, or that I did check and there was nothing there. I chalk it up to just being so tired I was hallucinating. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe,